Oh, Joel! That guy got faked the punch. Hey, Joel! Don't fake a hate crime today, Joel! Don't fake any hate crimes today! Keep that megaphone away from your face, Joel! Don't fake any hate crimes, Joel! Don't punch yourself, Joel! Don't punch yourself again!
For those of you who are listening, and for context, I'm going to check the audio in a second. I spent an hour trying to fix the audio issues. If there's a divergence, you know what? Before I even go, this is how neurotic I am, people. I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to listen to myself for 1 second. Do I hear myself? Am I muted? No. I'm going to go to locals. Am I muted? Locals, let me... One of these days. Am I muted and can people hear me? I'm going to go to locals where I know I'm going to get non-joking responses. You are not muted. I can hear you. Sounds great. Did you hire a professional? Oh, hallelujah. Let's just start all of this again. For context, people, for those of you who are listening to this video and you don't know who Joel Harden is, member of the Ontario New Democrat Party, sitting member of provincial parliament, he is the man who, at the protest that I attended as a journalist or journalizing, documenting reality, lied about having been punched in the face at the Education Not Indoctrination protest back in Ottawa over the summer, lied about having been punched in the face by an anti-trans protester. He lied. The aggregate knowledge of the interwebs discovered that he actually banged his own megaphone into his own face and then had the balls to lie to the world about having been the victim of a fake hate crime. So this is reporter on the street, and I'm using the words reporter and journalist obviously for context because of what we're going to talk about today. Pleb the reporter, Pleb the trucker, heckling Joel Harden the liar.
And try to claim a hate crime. No fake hate crimes today, Joel.
By the way, he's got his 2S LGBTQIA plus goons with him again, blocking him with a poster, a banner. What the hell do you go to a protest for? To cover your face and to protect yourself from being seen. You go to a counter protest so that people can see you and hear your counter protest words. This is virtue signaling cowardice of the highest order. And yeah, we don't need to play the whole thing. It is Pleb the reporter, Pleb the trucker. Some would say berating. Others might just say heckling the living bejesus, and rightly so, out of Joel Harden. Hate hoaxer. Hate crime hoaxer.
Oh, he's gonna punch himself. Oh, here we go. Be careful. Smash it. Smash the like button. Joel. Fake hate crime. Fake hate crime. Fake hate crime.
Oh, okay. And at one point you saw Joel pretending that he couldn't hear, but saying like, "Oh, I can't hear you." All right, people. How's it going? There's news that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to talk about it later tonight or tomorrow, obviously. The British government is now inquiring with social media platforms, TikTok yesterday, Rumble today, as to whether or not Russell Brand is able to monetize his content on their platforms. And TikTok apparently confirmed that he can't monetize his response video, and I think that they confirmed that he's not monetized on their platform anymore. What is it called when government works in concert with private enterprise and media to promote a common interest? It's called fascism. And we're living through it right now. They are playing for our freedom for keeps, and they are playing dirty and they're playing hard. And nobody's going to know better than that than today's guest. Okay, so standard intro disclaimers: no medical advice, no legal advice, no election fortification advice, super chats, rumble mans, you know all that stuff. We're going to end on YouTube sooner than later because piss off YouTube. I'll post this later to YouTube, but YouTube is my now secondary backup and not my go-to. Rumble is my exclusive go-to. So we're going to end on YouTube and go over to Rumble. We're going to have the after party at locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The guest today, I'm the host today. I guess I'm the host every day. The guest today, Stephen Horn. The question that is going to be the question of law is, what is a journalist? Is Stephen Horn a journalist? And was Stephen Horn just charged with and convicted of crimes of being a journalist? For those of you who don't know, and in our locals community, someone rightly said, when you have a guest, always include a bit of a more of a description than what I've been including. I will. You're going to hear his story today. Stephen, I can see you in the back. You're good to come in? There we go. People, Stephen Horn, and let's hear this story. Share away, everybody. Share the Rumble link. Don't share the YouTube link, obviously. We're going to hear some outrageous injustices today. Stephen, because I have adjusted my audio, could you just give a quick audio, and I'm going to let the locals community tell me if our audio levels are good.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, dude, thank you for coming
on. How long do you want me to talk for?
I'll let the chat catch up and tell us if one of us is way blown out. Thank you for coming on. And like I told you before, I'm gonna ask too many questions, and you're gonna have to rely on your good judgment as to what you should not answer. But look, before we even get into everything, 30,000-foot overview as to who you are, for those who may not know.
Yeah, so I'm an independent journalist. I'm from the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I really prefer reporting on local stories, but on January 6th, I ended up reporting on the riot at the Capitol, which I was not expecting. But when I found myself there with a camera, I did my best to, cover the newsworthy events that, began to develop.
Now, I've got to ask you this. Everybody in my community knows I'm a bit obsessive about it. You look about as young as my oldest nephew. How old are you?
25.
Yeah, you're almost, you're a little older than my oldest nephew. Dude, so you're 25, born and raised in South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah. Cool. On North Carolina has portions that are on the beach, correct? Or is North Carolina...
So there's the East Coast, the Outer Banks. There's sort of a chain of islands out there, and then a inner beach as well.
All right, cool. And we're not going to waste too much time on childhood, but I do have to know, siblings. How many siblings in your family?
Yeah, I have an older brother and an older sister.
Okay, so you're the youngest of three. Okay, interesting. What are you allowed to say what your parents do or did for a living?
Yeah, so I'm a computer programmer. I work at our family's sort of small computer software firm.
Okay, very cool. And that's all I'm going to ask. That's as intrusive as I'm going to get. Youngest of three, interesting. Parents are not psychiatrists, which would also have been interesting, jokes aside. So you studied computer science. Did you study journalism? This is going to be relevant only because of where we're going with this discussion.
Yeah, so I didn't, officially study either, computer science or journalism. I was homeschooled, so I, basically learned both the same way, which is sort of picking it up through experience.
Homeschooled for your entire elementary and high school experience?
Yes, and I also did college from home, distance education.
If you do college from home, though, you have professors that are not your parents, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got a degree from Thomas Edison State University, which is in New Jersey.
Okay, very cool. That's interesting. So you did elementary, high school, and university from home. I'm going to ask an obvious, maybe not an obvious question. Do you have a fear of crowds, or do you have agoraphobia or anything? Or is this is just a decision that the way your life?
I'm not afraid of crowds, but if I'm in a crowd like January 6th or like the riots I've covered, I am definitely very wary, but no agoraphobia.
All right, now, so explain to us what you would consider to be your journalistic history, which is going to be relevant in terms of whether or not people recognize you as a journalist or an insurrectionist with a camera. What has been your what you would consider to be your experience in journalism?
Yeah, so growing up, when I was still a teenager, our family did a 21 DVD documentary series on the Civil War. So we traveled across America, filmed on location at pretty much every major Civil War site. So I had quite a bit of, video, audio, documentary experience from that. I also worked on a project in Nigeria where we, as part of a mission trip we discovered that the headmaster of an orphanage or boarding school that was being funded by the United States, he was abusing his students. So we sort of did an investigation. We went over there for a week, interviewed a bunch of witnesses, victims, etc. Put that into sort of a video project to share with both the ministry and, the general public who funded them. That was sort of the, projects I had done before I started doing independent journalism. where I was publishing my own stuff in the summer of 2020.
Okay, that's very cool. So I watched your interview with Alison Morrow. Everyone should give it a watch, but it's going to be outdated now because that was before your trial, and now you have since been convicted. So when you described your prior journalism experience and making the documentaries, you did that with as I say, a family project, and not to be demeaning or belittling, but you did that with your parents as part of your homeschooling, and it was like a bona fide, legit.
Yeah. I mean, you can find it in some national parks.
That's flipping cool. Is it on YouTube?
No, I don't really want to say the name, but
okay, forget it.
I don't want it to get kicked out of the national parks.
Okay, fine, understood.
Yeah, but it was professionally done. We had a videographer with professional experience. We had all professional camera gear, and then us running around doing everything else.
And the other one where you went to what country was it again?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. And so if you go with a mission, I presume that you come from a religious family?
Yeah, so my dad is a pastor.
Okay. So you go to Nigeria and expose abuse within an orphanage.
Yeah, and I the story ended up getting picked up by the Nigerian media once we had done sort of this this initial investigation and further investigation later. And so one of the things that we presented to the judge in one of the motions, arguing selective prosecution motion sort of on First Amendment press grounds, was a letter from the Nigeria Union of Journalists basically saying, hey, Stephen worked on this project. It was good journalism project.
Holy shit. Okay, we're going to get into it now. So we're going to end this on YouTube. It changes nothing from our end. I'm just going to go end on YouTube. Everyone, you got the link to Rumble, and I'll give everyone the link to Locals afterwards. So end on YouTube now, and come on over to Rumble, and then vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Okay, so let's get into this. So you start doing independent journalism after these projects with your family, state parks, Nigerian abuse in orphanages. What sort of examples under your resume of independent do you have, and that did you submit to the court before we even get into the day of January 6th?
So prior to January 6th, it was, I guess, only several months before, in the summer of 2020, when the George Floyd riots broke out across America. And I was looking at the media, the independent journalists, and some of the new media journalists who are covering these riots so much better than the mainstream media was. They're actually going on the ground, getting us video, whether it's Kenosha or Los Angeles or New York, basically all the cities, Minneapolis, Atlanta, whatever. All of these cities, that was independent journalists, the type of journalists. Some of them did work for some of the newer media corporations, but they were the ones that I saw out there getting the video. Whether it's people like Brendan Gutenschwager or Elijah Schaefer. I remember a lot of his videos. Drew Hernandez, Richie McGinnis, all the people like this. I was saying, hey, they're doing a lot better coverage. And so when I looked in my local area, I didn't really see any journalists doing that sort of coverage. It was just the local mainstream media, the local TV stations, local newspapers, and they were basically generally doing what the local media was doing across America and covering the riots, which was kind of, staying back because it's dangerous. And some of the, politics, they might tend to sympathize with what the Black Lives Matter protesters, then turned into rioters, were demonstrating about. So I started going out to these demonstrations in Raleigh, North Carolina, which some of them ended up turning into riots, and basically documenting those and publishing them to a Facebook page that I created just for covering local news.
All right, wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so getting to the events of January 6th. You're 25 now, so you're 23 at the time. You're in North Carolina. How do you decide to even go and attend? What was the reason for deciding to go down? Were you in the area already? How did you end up in DC?
Yeah, so basically, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I was interested in sort of the Trump or MAGA phenomenon. So I had been wanting to, attend a Trump rally in person for a while, just because, as I'm sure from going on the ground to an event can be a lot different experience than just viewing it from your home on a computer screen. So I wanted to attend, at least one in person. I'm sort of a procrastinator. So, by the time the election was over, I hadn't gone to any. I hear about this protest on January 6th. It wasn't like the previous two sort of stop the steal protests in DC in November and December, because, Trump himself was supposed to be there. So I was like, okay, this is probably my last chance to, observe this phenomenon in person. So I brought a helmet cam that I had made from my experience watching journalists in Raleigh be assaulted. I had made this it was like a skateboarding helmet. I took some of the foam out on the inside and built a custom camera there so that I could be recording, and the rioters, who might tend to do violence to members of the media, would not know that I was recording. I think many of the independent journalists took somewhat similar measures, though obviously, they're not talking about that publicly too much, because that kind of ruins the point. But yeah, it's my understanding that was sort of a common practice, because when you're covering these riots, there's a very strong anti-media atmosphere, where even people they perceived as their allies, if you're just wearing normal clothes, they would say, put your phone away, we don't want you to film us. And then, they'd go commit illegal activities. So I brought this camera with me that I had made, this helmet cam, because I had seen the reporting from the Stop the Steal demonstration in DC in November, and also the one in December. There was reporting, I don't know if you remember the viral video of Charles Downs, where I think he and his fiance are trying to make their way back to their hotel through where the counter protesters had gathered, and they're attacked, liquids are thrown at them, whatnot. There's also reports that Proud Boys and Trump supporters had been stabbed. So I brought the camera, not because I was expecting anything close to what ended up happening on January 6th, but because, I wanted to be prepared. So if I came across any of this, sort of street level stuff, I would be able to safely document it.
Let me ask you a question, because you said in the beginning I was going not as a Trump supporter, and I'm not a Trump supporter. And I'm not asking because I'm interested in the politics. I'm actually more interested in whether or not, it's relevant potentially for the conviction. Are you conservative by nature, or are you a
yeah?
Democrat?
So I'm conservative. I'm definitely on the right side of the political spectrum, but I would be more liberal, and I would also have sort of apply a higher moral standard to candidates than probably most voters.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm only asking because if you were what some would call a lefty Democrat and you got convicted by a judge, that would be interesting. And I'd ask you if you still consider yourself a lefty Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, John Sullivan is going up on trial pretty soon. I think the next month or so, and he's definitely a leftist. So we'll see how his trial goes.
So you say you had seen violence at prior protests, and I'm asking this, maybe it's call it bias. When I went to the protest in Ottawa, I saw no violence from what they would call the far right side, but the only menacing scowls I got were from the other side, the counter protesters. Had you anticipated or seen violence at a Trump protest prior to that, or were you sort of anticipating counter protester issues and the infamous fiery but mostly peaceful type protest? Was it for the response that you were anticipating, or potential violence coming from the pro-Trump crowd?
Yeah, what I had personally witnessed in covering events in Raleigh, it was always left-wing events. There wasn't a whole lot of the specific ones I went to, if they're holding them at night, you could get sort of a feel from what flyers, what materials they put out, whether this was going to be one of the entirely peaceful protests or a mostly peaceful protest. So what I had seen in Raleigh was exclusively, what I had personally seen in Raleigh was exclusively left-wing protesters, that the BLM Antifa sort, that sort of alliance there, that were, I had seen doing violence. I had seen the property destruction that they were doing on the streets.
Okay, so you've concocted a helmet. What type of camera are you using inside of it? Is it a GoPro?
No, so it was I don't know if you heard of like a Raspberry Pi.
So no, it's like a little now.
Yeah, it's like a little computer chip that you can use for a variety of purposes. But one of the things you can do is buy like a little camera module. So it ends up being a lot smaller than a GoPro, and most importantly, the aperture for the camera is much smaller. So instead of having a big lens like this that you have to hide, it's a very small lens that you can hide in a small hole. But if you watch the footage I took, you can also see that there's definitely some downsides to that, and that it didn't have the same stabilization or wide angle.
Or resolution, I presume. This is the
it was taking it in 1080p, so it was technically HD.
Okay, so that's very cool. So it's a much smaller. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that. I can never think of anything other than a GoPro. It's the my rule or go to. So you have this camera in your helmet. When do you get down to DC?
Yeah, so I saw on social media someone was arranging a bus to go up, and it was very convenient for me because I was leaving very early in the morning on that day, around like 1 or 1:30 in the morning from Raleigh, and it was coming back that same night. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna, pretty reasonably priced ticket. So I got on the bus, rode up to DC, got there I think around 6 or 6:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness! All right, 6:30 in the morning. So you leave at 1:30 in the morning. You're there at 6:30 in the morning. How does your day progress? And what do you see starting from 6:30 in the morning, culminating at 1 or 2?
Yeah, so the first thing I did is make my way even from that where the bus was parked on the other side of the river, taking the metro into DC. You could already out there see all these Trump supporters who were gathering, making their way towards the ellipse and the Washington Monument. So, it's very easy. You didn't need any directions to know where you were going because there were just this, large number of people in the streets. And what I specifically remember is getting to the Washington Monument and sort of looking down each street that is leading there. And, there's a larger number of people just on each individual street than there were at any of the events I had covered previously. So I was like, okay, wow, this is on, these Trump sort of this whole different scale of numbers. I'm not sure what the actual total is. I believe there's dispute by different people, estimates as to like what the total crowd side was, but it was certainly, orders of magnitude larger than anything that had come together in Raleigh.
And the mood, the overall ambiance as you're approaching, jovial, angry, aggressive. What was the tone?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really notice a whole different tone than an ordinary demonstration or gathering or protest. That I would expect to not break into violence. So I didn't get early on in the day. I did not get any hints of that as I moved around the crowd. I walked around quite a bit. I walked all the way down to Black Lives Matter Plaza to see if there are counter protesters gathered there already. So I basically, was just walking around. I didn't go inside the ellipse area because there was that very long line you had to wait in, but basically, walking all over the place to just, get a feel for the different groups. Because there would be like, one group over here that are specifically gathered. They're like, anti-CCP. And so they have, some group that came from, some place where they all gathered in one place. So, these are, a group from New Jersey, or you'd see a group in another place that had, some banner or matching T-shirts or signs. So just, interesting going around this rally and seeing that the different people and elements that had gathered. There are actually a lot of people passing out like anti-CCP literature, which was kind of odd because that wasn't something I'd really seen in Raleigh.
Anti-communist CCP,
yes.
Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, I believe these would be aligned with like maybe Hong Kong or Taiwan, where immigrants primarily from those areas who were gathered there and spreading their message about how the CCP was bad.
Okay, interesting. So by what time do you make it to Trump's speech?
Yeah, so I didn't make it in like inside the ellipse where they had like the security area and people going through security to get in there. Like I said, there's a huge line. So they did have like screens set out. So basically like there's the ellipse here, and then the next block over is the Washington Monument. And that was completely open. It's a big field, slight hill, and the Washington Monument in the middle. So there are a whole lot more people gathered around, on the Washington Monument block than there were in the ellipse. And they had a screen out there and audio, but I guess whoever set the audio, maybe didn't do a good job because there was like this echo and it was extremely hard to understand and hear what anyone was saying if you were outside of the ellipse area, just because of however they had those speakers set up.
Now, I pulled up a picture. Let me just see here. The ellipse is well, that's not the best picture of the ellipse. The ellipse is the grassy field in front of, what are we looking at there? Is that the
Yeah, so I believe it's between the White House and the Washington Monument. So at that time, it was all fenced off. They had made it into sort of they had set stages up. They had plexiglass, bulletproof glass around the speakers. They had it. I believe they even had it all set up in chairs. And so, to get into that area, you had to go through, metal detectors, probably set up by Secret Service or whatever, and that was where, Trump was supposed to come and actually give his speech.
Okay. And so you're there, and it's shoulder to shoulder, just hundreds of thousands of people, a sea of people.
Yeah, potentially. Definitely when you got close, sort of like in the street between the ellipse and the Washington Monument, it was very densely packed together. Difficult to try to make your way through, because there's the line to get into the ellipse, and that was also where they had put the porta potties. There's lines for that too. So just right there, it was the most packed together, and then sort of as you went across the Washington Monument, it kind of thinned out some. There were people with like picnic blankets and stuff. So it was, yeah, once again, I don't know the total number of the crowd size. All I know is that it was very large.
All right. And then, so you're in the crowd, and then what happens, and how do you end up at the Capitol building?
Yeah, so basically I was, like I said, I was wandering around this area, the Washington Monument, the ellipse, checking out the crowd. And it ended up getting very cold that day. I guess it must have been, North Carolina is not too far away from DC, but I guess whatever the weather pattern is, it was much colder in DC than I was expecting. So, I put all my clothes on that I had brought in my backpack, and I ended up heading over to a Starbucks to get a hot drink. When I came out of there, I sort of went down to Black Lives Matter Plaza again to see if anyone was gathering there yet. And when I was coming back up, when I get to Pennsylvania Avenue, sort of, I believe that's where the White House is, I see, Trump supporters are moving in the direction of what I later find out is the Capitol.
Are you interviewing people, talking to people? What type of footage are you capturing at this point in time?
Yeah, so I wasn't really intending to cover the Trump rally. What I specifically brought the camera for was, if I did see any of this conflict, between counter protesters and the Trump supporters, or with the police or whatnot. So, there are lots of reporters out there with cameras interviewing people. The camera I brought was sort of, dedicated for a specific purpose. So I just had it there in case. So I wasn't really interviewing anyone around the Trump rally because, like I said, that wasn't really what I had came prepared to potentially cover.
Okay. And so then what happens, and how do you end up in the Capitol building?
Yeah. So basically, as I see all these Trump supporters making their way down Pennsylvania Avenue, I joined them, travel in the same direction they're going to, see what's up, basically. And so it was when I got to the end of Pennsylvania Avenue, it sort of like ends in a parking lot almost before you reach Capitol grounds, just before the edge shows. When I was in that parking lot, I sort of sensed, it always sounds, like mumbo jumbo when I hear myself describe it, but I could sense the same energy in the crowd that I had sensed previously covering demonstrations that turned into riots with illegal activity. And I don't even know what particularly it was, because at that point I hadn't seen any violence against the police. I hadn't seen anything broken. I hadn't seen any, fencing torn down, but something was just, sort of like when you get that sense that like someone is looking at you. It's just like sort of this additional sense that you can't really, put a finger on what particularly, what particular sensation is causing this. But I was like, okay, maybe it's the body language or whatever. But that's when I pulled out my camera in that parking lot, put it on my head. No one else knew it was a camera, and started recording. And so from there, I guess I followed where people went onto Capitol grounds. I arrived after the riot had been going on for about an hour. So it started at 12:53, at the video of the people pushing the fence at the perimeter of the Capitol grounds, or Raps is whispering in the guy's ear. That's when the rioting and the violence really started at 12:53, when Trump was still giving his speech. So when I arrived, it was about an hour later. Completely different position. All the fencing was on the ground or moved out of the way, and there were tens of thousands of people on Capitol grounds. So I end up making my way towards the Capitol, sort of going around to avoid trying to wade through the densest part of the crowd. So that meant I ended up sort of coming along the side of where most people was gathered, where there's a large staircase called the Northwest Staircase. There's sort of two grand staircases on the west side of the Capitol leading up to the upper level. And so I ended up, because I was on the side, looking up at the face of the staircase and that scaffolding there, I actually didn't see, the main police line where rioters were facing off with the police and fighting with them. One of the first things I saw when I got there was a man who I later found out was named Derek Vargo. He's being carried off on this piece of improvised a piece of bicycle rack fencing that they were using as an improvised shelter. So there was a couple police officers, a couple DC fire department, and a couple members of the crowd who are carrying this guy out. He's unconscious. Someone's looking at him saying he broke both his legs. But I later come to find out, after January 6th, I find, multiple angles of video showing that he had sustained those injuries by a police officer pushing him off the side of that Northwest Staircase, about a 2 to 3 story fall. But, that was.
And I'm looking, this is what I understand is the west side, correct? And the staircases.
Yes. Yeah. So that's in the center there. You can sort of see in the back, there's a Capitol building. You can sort of see the second level there, and then all the people. So that picture in the top middle there.
Top middle, this one right here.
Yes. So that was sort of to my left. That happened later. But so that was to my left, and then to my right was sort of this large staircase. So when I was there, people weren't climbing up, but you can see there's sort of that wall there that, I don't know what that's technically called, but it's multiple stories up to where there's a terrace at the top. So where Derek Vargo had been pushed off of was about halfway up the staircase. So 2 to 3 story fall. When I see him, looks unconscious, looks really bad.
Legs are mangled?
I didn't really see the details of his legs, but someone who was standing, I could hear audibly someone who was standing there examining, saying, his legs are broken, possibly his back is broken as well. And he has come forward and done an interview where he said, he had to get extensive surgery, pins, metal rods and stuff put in his legs to sort of repair that damage.
Your camera is running the entire time from the time you start feeling the energy change a little bit, or
yes, yeah, exactly. So I recorded 2 hours of video continuously rolling from when I stopped the camera from when I started the camera just before entering Capitol grounds to when I stopped it just before I left 2 hours later.
All right. Now, your camera's out of focus. You might want to. I don't know how you regain.
Yeah, this is so frustrating.
Maybe if you put your hand. Well, I find that if you put your hand in front, there you go.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
I hate that.
It just usually it goes in and out, and that one wasn't coming back. So you recorded for a full 2+ hours. Government had and got, I presume, your entire footage, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. So hold on, let's follow the chronology here. So you don't see the initial breach. You get there, people are already climbing the wall. It's the mayhem that we just saw in that picture. Then what do you do?
Yeah, so basically what I see is in hindsight, I know that I arrived sort of just before one of the most critical moments. I see there's police officers up on that staircase, where now I know that they had just pushed this guy off of. But what I see is the police are up there. The people on the ground start throwing objects up at the police on the staircase. And then there's sort of a crowd below on the staircase. And so the police are sort of facing pressure from 2 angles, from the people on the staircase and then from the people on the side throwing objects in. I saw a traffic cone, some miscellaneous maybe construction debris because there's construction in the area. And so I see those police officers retreat up their staircase, and it's just like a floodgate has been opened. I can see that floods of people going up that staircase to that, sort of that upper terrace area where that wall leads to. And so, I wasn't aware at the time that right on the other side of the scaffolding and the staircase was where the main police line was. So at that moment, when people are ascending up this staircase, what they're doing is they're getting behind where, the most heavily armed and heavily trained officers are. And so they're able to, when they reach the actual building, there's no police officers there at all. There's no police officers at the doors because they're all sort of deployed at the bottom of the staircase. So, that is context I learned since then. That's, sort of the story I put in the documentary I made. But when I get up onto the staircase, I'm following this crowd of people, and I see that they are entering through a door, which is called the Senate wing door. That's where the first people sort of broke in. You've seen the video where they have the 2x4, they're smashing in the window. One of the Proud Boys has a police shield. He helped smash in the window as well. And then, they sort of kick the door open from the inside. And so when I arrive, the windows are busted out. The door is open, but one of the panes is damaged. And there's just people going in and going in and going in.
Where are the cops at this time now? Because I had Tarek Johnson on. I think it was last week or the week before. He's a former Capitol Police.
Yeah, I know who. I actually recorded him later in the day. I'll mention that when it gets that. But yeah,
and he was telling me there were several hundred cops there for the 100,000 plus, at least 100,000 people that were there, and it was just a joke. Like there was no chance. They had no chance of doing anything. They weren't set up for it. How many police do you see, and where do they go when they back up? Like, and is there violence?
Yeah,
that's the other question.
So when I arrive at the Senate wing door, there is no police there. I know from reviewing video from people like Jane Nex and Brandon Gutenschwager that basically the police who I had seen on the middle of the staircase, they retreat up to the top of the staircase. But, when they no longer have sort of like the bottleneck effect of the staircase and the scaffolding, they only hold the top of the staircase for literally 60 seconds before they just scatter and they just sort of wander off. Some go to the right, some go to the left, and none of them go to defend the doors, which the rioters now have, free access to. There's no one between them and these doors. And, you can, if you look at the video, the surveillance video from when that Senate wing door was first breached, you can see, like one officer runs up as the first person climbed through the window. He sprays him with pepper spray, and then he runs back down the hallway. And so, the police response at this door was pretty much non-existent. When I arrived, there was no police officers near the door.
All right. And so I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm not going to ask that question. But so your progression as all this goes, like how far into the Capitol do you get?
Yeah, so when I'm there at the door, I hear a voice from the person in front of me. I didn't recognize his face because he had a mask on, but I recognized his voice. It was Elijah Schaefer. So I recognize, he's a journalist. He's covering this. He was telling people, if you go in the building, they have the right to shoot you. Now, as someone who is vaguely familiar with the Constitution and constitutional law, I was pretty sure that was incorrect. The police just can't shoot you. But when I walk through those doors, one of the first things I hear is like some loud bangs. I'm like, okay, maybe they are shooting people. So I walk back out for a couple minutes until it's obvious that they aren't just, mowing down everyone who comes in. And, I go back in, follow the crowd. So basically, I went almost as far as any portions of the crowd in the Capitol. I guess the only place I didn't go where they were going on the floor of the Senate. I more headed the people moving towards the House side, and I didn't go with the group that ended up going towards the Speaker's lobby where Ashley Babbitt got shot. But when she was shot, I was like about a hallway and a staircase away from that lobby.
A hallway and a staircase. So that's, you see nothing, but you hear the pop and you hear the reaction from the crowd?
Yeah, I didn't hear it, but it was pretty fast that the rumor starting spreading that, someone's been shot. And so I heard of it. I was close to the sort of the main doors of the House chamber where people were were trying to beat the doors down. They're all packed into this sort of little vestibule trying to break in. You know, that's, you might have seen like the famous photo where there's like a pane of glass broken out and you can see the handgun pointing through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was at that door there where people were trying to break into the House chamber. So, you know, there's a lot of banging there. You know, I might have heard the shot, but I couldn't, you know, pick it out for you.
And did you end up getting to the scene of the shooting, or did you not make it that far in?
Yeah, I did not, you know, so basically the group that went down the hallway where Ashley Babbitt was shot left from the group that was at these doors where I was, but, you know, I didn't see them leave. So when I heard there was a shooting, you know, I didn't really know where it was. And also, if you've been at a protest or demonstration or riot or whatever, you can kind of get the sense that often the stories that are passed around of what's happening on, you know, the other side of things, you know, they tend to get distorted somewhat. So when I first heard about the shooting, you know, I was trying to get some more information, ask questions. I ran into a couple people later who, you know, had seen stuff or been there. And so, you know, I was trying to ask some questions to people to figure out, hey, is this, you know, something that really happened?
All right. And I mean, do you learn that it is in fact something that really happened the day of?
Yeah, so I didn't learn that until I was actually outside the Capitol and I ran into, you know, John Sullivan, Jaden X. People were asking him. I'm not really sure why people, you know, sort of kind of confronted him as he was, you know, walking down the stairs, but they were like, hey, are you even a Trump supporter? And he was like, you know, I'm a member of the press. You know, he opened his jacket to show the press he was wearing on his bulletproof vest. And he pulled his phone out and started showing people the video that he had captured of Ashley Babbitt being shot. So that was when I was like, okay, someone actually has video of this. This is someone who is there. So that's, you know, pretty good chance that this is an accurate story.
So and how does it come to be that you then end up leaving, and then we're going to get into the aftermath? So yeah, how long do you spend in there? When do you leave? And
yeah,
what do you
so
do?
I don't remember the exact time. I think it's somewhere around an hour that I was in the building for. So I ended up they ended up deploying tear gas sort of at the House chamber to break out the people who were there after Ashley Babbitt had been shot. So, you know, it's tear gas billowing through the halls of Congress, not something many people have witnessed, but, you know, I ended up moving back towards the rotunda, which is in the center of the building with the rest of the crowd. You know, there were people smoking marijuana there. You know, that's where the picture of me is, sort of, you know, with my foot on the statue, leaning over to take video of this scuffle that broke out between like a clump of the rioters there and the police who were holding this entrance. And just, you know, one of the strangest phenomenon I had seen, where the people just, you know, packed together and were like pushing as a group, you know, attacking these police there. So I was up there, you know, trying to film it. So I guess I missed. I just jumped over one of the most important things I witnessed, which was, I don't know if you recall, Officer, I believe it's Harry Dunn, from the January 6th committee, from CNN, from whatnot. So I actually was one of the few journalists to document some of the encounter between him and the Oath Keepers. And, you know, as we know, he gave one story to the FBI saying, yeah, they were helping me. And then later he went back, changed his testimony to, oh, no, they weren't helping me. But what I saw was that there were some members of the crowd who were very angry at Officer Dunn. He was by himself. He had a rifle. He looked like he was about to start shooting people. And the Oath Keepers, that they were in militia gear, I recognized them by that. You know, I didn't know what organization they were with. They were sort of standing between, you know, this armed officer and the people who are angry at him and sort of trying to calm both sides down. So that was one of, you know, the scenes I witnessed there. That was sort of something that, you know, I think not many other journalists witness. You know, you can find lots of footage of the violence against the police. You can find lots of footage of you know, even them smoking marijuana in the rotunda or attacking the House door. But this incident with Officer Dunn and the Oath Keepers, there is very little footage of that. So, you know, that's one of the things I captured that, you know, not very many other journalists did at all. Right. So yeah, I ended up, you know, following some of the rioters who were wandering through Speaker Pelosi's office. You know, there's Big O Barnett sort of posing for the photographers there. I walked past him, didn't know who he was, didn't know, that the prominence that he would be elevated to with his picture. But I ended up, going into the rotunda. The police, I could get the sense that the police were kind of starting to get their game together, get organized, because the crowd who had spread out throughout the Capitol were kind of, starting to gather back in the rotunda. So, sort of filling up. And so I was like, okay, I'm making a conscious effort to sort of stay out of the police's way. I'm not going on the front lines anywhere where they're breaking through, right there. And, I'm also not going to stick around until they're literally pushing people out, because I'm, trying to stay out of their way, document stuff without becoming a part of it as much as possible. So I ended up leaving through the Columbus doors to the east side of the Capitol there, sort of the opposite side I had come from. And, I guess sort of as I was just about to leave, there was an officer to the right in the sort of chamber where the doors exit to the portico outside. There's an officer to the side basically saying, get out through this door. We want people to move out of the building. But then the officers who were actually at the door, shut the door so people couldn't get out. So I just sort of waited there for a couple minutes until they opened it again. And then, I was finally able to exit.
So you exit. At this time, you probably have no idea how the media has already started whipping this up. You have no idea what a story this is becoming, I presume.
So it was interesting. There was a TV on in Pelosi's office, and so I looked, and there was, it seemed to be live coverage of the crowd, and I was sort of surprised because when I was over by the house, I had looked out the window and seen a plaza where there's a group of police officers, maybe 50 to 100, and they're just standing around. I didn't see any crowd there. It was just like a group of police officers. So I kind of assumed, okay, well, if the police officers are just standing there, it must be because they've sort of, already cleared the grounds. So when I saw on the TV that there was still a huge number of people out there, I was kind of surprised because, I had assumed that the police just standing around meant that, they had sort of done whatever they were going to do. So when I get outside to the east side, there is certainly a much smaller number of people there than there had been on the west side, but, still a sizable group there.
All right. And now what do you do for the rest of the day? And I guess we got to get into when you get arrested. But when you get arrested, when you turn over your footage to the FBI, you get out and then you realize that, holy shit, this was a lot more, or this is becoming a lot more than a protest. What do you do to the end of the day, and when do you get home, and when do you know that you're in big fucking trouble?
Yeah, so basically, I sort of stick around in that area. Sort of, there's the large portico, the large steps going up there. So I went down to the bottom of the steps. That's where I ran into John Sullivan, as I described. And also something interesting I was recording there was someone had brought like a little PA system, and they basically had an open mic where people were coming up, sort of saying, oh, I'm mad about the lockdowns, or I'm mad about this, I'm happy about this. One lady was like, I'm glad Trump, looks like I'm out of focus again. I'm glad Trump founded the Space Force because, the aliens are coming, and I'm glad Trump is founded the Space Force to fight the aliens that are coming. There's, sort of a broad range of what people were saying on the mic there. And I guess one of the sort of interesting things that I noted was Tarek Johnson. I didn't know who he was at the time. All I could see was that, he was a police officer in a blue uniform. He had a, red MAGA cap that was sitting on his head, and he was sort of leading a group of the heavily armored riot police down that staircase and sort of out through the crowd.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when do you head home?
Yeah, so it wasn't too long after that, and I was probably outside the Capitol recording video for maybe 40 minutes or so, recording some of this open mic stuff, recording people letting out air from the tires of a couple police vehicles that were there. I thought that was sort of interesting because the news media later reported that the tires were slashed, but it was actually just an old guy with a multi-tool letting the air out. But I realized oh man, if I don't leave now, I'm going to miss my bus. So, I figure out where I need to go. I run to the nearest metro station, get back, and end up, fortunately making it on the bus before it departs back to North Carolina. So basically, when I got on the bus, the first thing I did was, download and transcode my footage so I could upload it. When I get home, I upload it to Facebook, to Rumble. I didn't upload it to YouTube because I kind of knew they they like to censor stuff, and I didn't really have a channel at that point that I uploaded to. And so, that was sort of my priority when I got home, was to upload this video I had captured.
The
That
full
was the purpose of capturing the video, was to upload it.
the full 2+ hours unedited. You just go upload the entire thing.
Yeah, so I uploaded it, and I also split it up into clips of the of some of the most newsworthy moments or whatever where I had captured something, and that's when I actually created my Twitter account so I could upload that in a thread format. Because prior to that point, I was not active on Twitter. So after I'd uploaded this video, there's the message that I put along with it. Basically, some notes on what I witnessed, a note on why I was there, which was to document it, not to join in. And so that day, January 7th, I also reached out to the FBI. And so I think they had already created their January 6th specific tip line at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But, this was a 2-hour video in HD. I think the file was too large to upload it directly. So I ended up just sending it in through their normal tip system, saying, hey, I have this video, let me know how I can get it to you.
Interesting. Now, are you sending it to them because you think you might be in trouble, or because you
No.
think it might assist them in doing what they need to do? Or, I guess like some people are going to say, why the heck would you send the footage in if it's going to incriminate other people? Like, what was the thought process in terms of why you even sent it to them in the first place?
Yeah, so my thought process is, right what I put in the tip, which is, hey, I saw people assaulting police officers and I saw evidence of property damage. That was the two things. I was like, okay, that the FBI, over the course of 2020, they certainly had not been arresting all of the people who were engaged in rioting, but, they had arrested like the guy who like bashed a police officer in the head with a hammer in Portland or whatever. So, I thought that the assaults and the vandalism would be something that they are interested in, even though, they generally seem not to be interested in much else.
Okay. And you send it in through the FBI tip line. When do you get a response? When do you get a response on that? And when do you find out that you're on the list?
Yeah, so, I left my name, I left my email address, I left my phone number. I was expecting them to sort of get back in touch with me fairly rapidly. But it wasn't, I think it was a week later. It wasn't until there was a viral image of me that was posted on the New York Times Magazine Instagram account, where, I'm up on the base of the statue filming this assault on the police. Obviously in the picture, you can't see the assault on police because he's pointing the camera at me instead. But, that picture was part of a viral post. So apparently the FBI got a lot of tips by people who knew me or whatnot, or recognized me. And so I think for whatever reason, they didn't open an investigation when I sent a tip in, but they did open an investigation when these other people sent in tips about me.
Stephen, is that you right there?
Yes.
Are you wearing glasses? Hold on. You're wearing glasses now. I'm an idiot. Okay.
Yeah, so you can see from this picture, it looks like I'm wearing all black, but I'm actually wearing a green coat.
Okay, it looks like an American flag is tied to your genitalia, but I think that's just the
Yeah,
person
it's
below
just
you
on
holding
a
it.
flagpole.
Okay, and what's in your hand? Is that your phone?
Yeah, so basically, I had my the camera in my helmet, but the rioters had sort of pushed the police back around the corner. So I pulled out my smartphone, which is sort of a backup for me. And so I was reaching around the corner to try to capture with my smartphone what I didn't think would be captured on my helmet cam.
Dude, I'm looking at that picture and I'm looking at you now, and I would never be able to identify you in that photograph. So
yeah, I think
Times...
you could zoom in.
I'm zooming in. It looks like you have
photo.
Nah, it looks like you have different color hair and facial hair. So the New York Times posts that photo. They don't know who you are, but people identify you from that photo and then report you to the FBI.
Yeah. And so then, one day, it had been like a week. I hadn't heard back. I guess I wasn't sure if I was going to hear back because I assumed they would get in touch with me pretty quickly since they had my contact info. Then a week later, they show up at my house. I was at work, so they came over to my work, and they had a like a sheaf of documents, and I could see they had screenshots of the pipe bomber. And so, the first thing they asked me was not, were you at the Capitol? It was, oh, do you know anything about the pipe bomber? Which, I sort of got the idea that they weren't being entirely honest. So obviously, I did what any American should do and exercise my Sixth Amendment right to counsel. So they left their card, I got a lawyer, arranged an interview, and basically, went to their office and did an interview on the recommendation of my lawyer.
I like the fact that when you say lawyer, it actually sounds like you're saying liar.
Lawyer.
So they come to see you. You say no, thank you. Get a lawyer, and then you agree to do a sit down. When you did the sit down? I presume your lawyer's present. Was it clear that they were investigating you for wrongdoing, or did it feel still like an explorative sort of investigative interview?
It did feel sort of explorative because, they did ask me about my journalistic history. I told them basically everything I told you with my past history, working with others. And then also I had started, covering events locally in Raleigh. So I went through all that same stuff, was tried to be as open and honest as possible. That the FBI agent even described me as forthright in his testimony. But I answered all their questions, and there wasn't, like the definite sense that they were going to charge me, but my lawyer had made me aware, like, hey, these are the statutes they might charge you under.
When you sit down with them, you knew at this time that they were charging everyone under the sun, or was this still early on that they hadn't actually been charging that many people yet?
I don't recall. I believe this was in February or March of 2021. So I'm not really sure how many people they had charged at that point. I think they're focusing on, the ones that had been in the news basically, and apparently I qualified for that. But a lot of the ones they're arresting at that point were, people who had assaulted police or, were the QAnon shaman or whatever. But I don't think they had, started, I guess, sort of mass arresting the hundreds and thousands of people.
All right. When do they formally charge you?
Yeah, so I believe it was in March that they let us know, hey, we're going to charge you. And then in April, we arranged a date for me to turn myself in at the federal court in Raleigh. And so I'm not sure exactly what my lawyer was thinking would happen, but I don't think he was expecting them to, haul me inside, chain me up and basically leave me in a cell for a couple hours until the court here, because the government wasn't even asking for me to be detained. I was released on my own recognizance, but for whatever reason, in those 2 or 3 hours before the court hearing, I had to sit in a cell with my legs chained together. And then when I went before the judge, they had chains on my arms, chained to my legs, the whole rigmarole, when they weren't even asking for me to be detained.
Makes no sense. Okay. So you plead not guilty, I presume. Do they ever offer you a plea deal before going to trial?
Yeah, so they did offer me a plea deal pretty early on. It was a better plea deal than they started offering people later, because I think they're trying to get some cases moved through quickly. So they actually, what they offered was 3 years probation. They would not recommend any prison time, and so what they wanted me to do was sign a statement saying I was parading, picketing, or demonstrating in the Capitol, and plead guilty to that charge, which is parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the building. And as someone who is not parading, demonstrating, or picketing, that was just completely off the table. You could potentially have, arranged to plead guilty to entering or remaining in a restricted area, which I'm not sure what statement of facts they would have wanted me to sign for that. But, yeah, I wanted to go to trial because I wanted to tell my story to the court, sort of have my day in court. I guess more of an idealistic thing because I wasn't expecting, the the court or the jury to go my way when I went to trial. But I guess, yeah, I wanted to go to trial because, that's just sort of how the justice system is supposed to work.
Well, I mean, hindsight is 2020, and there's been a number of people who accepted plea deals, were criticized, but now seeing what's been going on, say, well, I made the right decision in retrospect. 3 years probation, no jail time.
Yeah, that's what they offered.
Thanks, but no thanks. Let's go to trial on the parading and picketing. What were the other 3 charges again?
Yeah, so there's entering and remaining in the restricted area. That's the biggest charge, Class A misdemeanor. And I believe the other 3 are Class B misdemeanors. There's disorderly or disruptive conduct in a restricted area. There's disorderly conduct in a Capitol building. And there's parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building.
And so you say no, thank you. Let's schedule the trial. They scheduled the trial. It was a trial by jury?
Yeah, that's what we chose.
Wh-
Yeah,
and
so
you were-
I guess we put it off for a while. The government and us were both fine with continuing it. I guess it wasn't until I guess spring or summer of 2020 that they assigned a new prosecuting attorney to the case. And the new attorney was like, we don't want to continue anymore. We want to schedule a trial date as soon as possible.
Who was the judge? Did you say Judge Sullivan?
Judge Kelly.
Judge Kelly. Oh, Judge Kelly's been doing some wonderful things in some of the other cases.
I've heard.
So you say schedule the trial. What does jury selection look like for the trial? Are you allowed to get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can describe the process. So basically, they have the 60 member jury panel come into the courtroom. The judge has a list of questions, which his list of questions was actually much shorter than the list of questions that the government and us jointly proposed. So he had a list of questions that he asked everybody, and he had them basically take notes of which questions they would answer yes to. So basically, like, do you know the defendant? Have you watched video of January 6th? You know any lawyers? You know any police officers? Did you or anyone you're close to work near the Capitol or live there or whatever? So there's questions in that genre. And so then he went through the jurors one by one, and they basically did the process they use for sidebars, which they would play white noise in the courtroom. And then, the lawyers and me would pick up our phones, and then the judge would use that to sort of ask, some more details from each individual juror about, the responses to the questions that they had indicated yes for.
These questions seem so utterly generic. Do you get a palpable political bias feeling from the jury and the final selected jurors?
Yeah, I mean, it was consistent from with what you would expect from a DC jury in terms of the professions, the political leanings, everything. Just,
I mean, it's
what you
60
from a selection of the DC population.
60 people, 54 Democrats, and maybe one independent. Well, I don't know what the. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you get your jury selection. Are you allowed saying the demographic: men, women, white, black, age? Roughly.
I mean, anyone walking into the courtroom could have seen. So I think it was about half and half. A balance of men, women, older. I'm not sure if there were any that were that young that made it on. White, black, Hispanic.
Okay, so
there's a variety.
Ethnically diverse, but politically probably not so much, or ideologically, I should say. What does this trial look like? How many days does the trial go on for? What evidence is adduced? And just explain this, what many are going to think is a kangaroo court show trial. What was the evidence that they adduced to the jury, and how long did this trial last?
Yeah, so jury selection was a whole day, and then there were another 2 days of testimony. So the government's argument was basically, Stephen Horn just decided to be a journalist when it was convenient for him, when he needed a legal defense, and actually he was just there to be a part of the mob. And so that was
I got to stop you there. I knew that's the argument. To which the defense is obviously, I uploaded this footage. I sent it to you before I was charged with anything for your assistance. how the hell can you raise? I presume that's what you raised as a defense, other than the journalistic defense. But I sent it to you.
We did we did get that in there. Unfortunately, we were not able to get in the statement that I had published along with the video on the night of January 6th, which was basically I was there to document it, not participate in the protest. So, the
Sorry.
judge ruled that that was hearsay because it was, my own statement. So they used a lot of statements against me because there's an exception to the hearsay rule. But then we were not allowed to use my own statements for me, which I'm sure you are somewhat familiar with that rule.
I'm sort of on the verge of hitting my own computer listening to this. The Judge Kelly, there was an objection to the evidence as to the accompanying statement that you yourself provided when communicating the video unsolicited to the FBI and not knowing that you'd ever be charged.
So this was the statement that I made when publishing it to the public. So when I published it on Facebook, on Rumble, there's a statement that went along with it where I basically said, hey, here's what I was doing. I was documenting it. I wasn't part of the protest. I wasn't doing it, just for a thrill. But, that particular statement, which was attached to the video where I posted it, was not admissible as evidence.
I presume that that's a basis for an upcoming appeal are you appealing this decision?
I'm not planning to at this point.
Well, but you don't know what how much time are you facing? Like, does this potentially carry jail time?
Yeah, for sure. It really depends on what the government will ask for. Some defendants on these charges, the government has been fine with like home detention or some, halfway house or something that's not, full prison. But other defendants, they've asked for multiple months in prison for these same charges.
I'm flabbergasted because the reason why I presume the judge says no, we're not going to let that statement with the original publication in is to compel you to testify in your own defense so that you can then offer that. Did you testify in your own defense?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you got.
And so we weren't allowed to bring it in my testimony either.
Well, I don't understand what sense that makes anymore, Stephen. I'm just a lawyer.
I'm not particularly that familiar with the rules of evidence, but apparently it has to do with the hearsay rule.
But it's not hearsay.
The government has
some. It's not hearsay when the person is there.
Exception for opposite party adverse admissions.
Okay, so look, I'm flabbergasted. I never practiced criminal law. I studied it. I'm flabbergasted. I'm going to have Barnes and I are going to talk about this Sunday night, and I'm going to ask the questions that I'd be asking. A, it's not hearsay because you're there to bring the out-of-court statement into court. B, just say it viva voce in your testimony. Why did you upload it? This is why I uploaded it, as confirmed by my statement the night I uploaded it. Holy crap. Okay.
Yeah, so I was allowed to say it in my testimony, but I wasn't allowed to say this is exactly what I said. And, this is the post. So I was allowed to testify as to my motive, but I wasn't allowed to bring in that post to sort of reinforce it.
Makes no sense. That makes no sense. Maybe there's something I don't know in terms of DC criminal law or federal criminal. That makes no sense. The question is, what did you do the evening of? Because you're a witness, you're the defendant. This is what I did. And okay. Deep breath. That makes no sense. So we're moving on. It doesn't really have, they're going to say, well, you got it in by the gist of it. And the jury doesn't motivate their conviction. They just say guilty. But so what was the other evidence? I mean, basically the prosecution really only needs to prove that you were there willingly and that, let the jury believe your defense or not. They went for 2 days in prosecution.
So there was a full day of prosecution testimony. They had they had a Capitol police officer, talking about what they were doing in the Capitol and what their defenses were and what signs they put up and whatnot. They had a Metropolitan officer come up who was, I think, in charge of the officers who I was filming being assaulted from that statue, from the base of that statue. They had her come up and testify, well, every person in that rotunda was an equal threat to us because we didn't know who was who. And, and one of our questions in the cross-examination was like, well, you see this photographer who is across, basically I'm on the base of the statue. The photographer is up on something, on the other side of this doorway who is taking the picture of me, like Was he there? Like, was he also counted among this? But I'm not sure how much of that argument we were sort of able to get in the minds of the jury, because that the Metropolitan Police officer had no idea who anyone was,
Dude,
including me.
You're an enemy of the DC jury pool. Your conviction is all but guaranteed, but I don't think everyone fully appreciated it that early on. Funny you should say it. Do you know who the photographer that captured you capturing the scene is? Do you know the person's name?
Yeah, so his name is Ashley Gilbertson. He also goes by Ash Gilbertson. He was actually one of the first to enter the Capitol through the Senate wing door after the rioters had busted it open. He was interviewed for the HBO documentary, I think like 4 hours at the Capitol or something. And, he seemed to be fine telling his story of, entering through this door, going inside the Capitol, wandering all around, without any fear that the FBI was going to come after him for that.
And did the FBI come after Ashley Gilbertson?
No.
Was he was never arrested? So the dude who captured you capturing the scene, both journalists, I guess, was he credentialed? Stephen, did he have a little press pass?
So we never got like a full list of who the members were of the press gallery were at the time, but I don't believe so.
I'm just going to see if
he was more of a freelance photographer, not someone who would be regularly covering Congress. So I mean, the arguments they made along those lines were, not even consistent with each other. At one point they would be arguing, well, obviously any legitimate journalist, who's a member of the press gallery would be entering the Capitol through one of the normal entrances through the security processes, have their bag searched, whatever. But as we know, there are many journalists who entered through the exact same doors I did, whether or not they had press credentials, but they were primarily members of the mainstream media, and none of the members of the mainstream media who have entered through the Senate wing door, the Columbus doors, the West Terrace door, all of these doors are doors they would not be normally allowed to enter through. All these doors are doors that had been breached. So I think if the government were logically consistent in their arguments of what behavior applies under these offenses, they could have charged any of those mainstream media journalists who either were outside where the police lines were covering that, which was technically in the restricted area, or especially the ones who entered the Capitol. According to their arguments, they could have charged every one of those, and they just haven't.
Ashley Gilbertson looks like he's Australian. That he was independently hired or contracted with the New York Times for some war coverage.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if he was commissioned on that day or whatever, if he was just freelance and sold his photos to them later. But yeah, that's who was taking those pictures.
That goes back to the what is a journalist, and most people agree it's an activity and not necessarily a profession. Was he credentialed? I mean, I'd love to know, but it won't change a damn thing. If he's working with the New York Times, he's an ally, and you are independent. They won't even recognize you as a journalist. When you testified in your own defense, did you make any statements that you said, they asked a good question and I may have just done something to harm myself in front of the jury? Did they score any points that even you recognized?
Well, one thing they were asking me about was like they subpoenaed my whole Facebook record, and so they're asking about a bunch of conversations I had with a friend of mine who is a Trump supporter, and he was sending me tons of screenshots of posts he was seeing or stuff about the election fraud or Stop the Steal. So they were asking me about those and kind of implying guilt by association to some extent, where I was endorsing that. They also brought up how, in one of these messages, I said, like, I'm out protesting at an abortion clinic. The church I attend, there's an abortion clinic in Raleigh where we go out, members of the church go out every Saturday and, hold signs, try to talk to people and stuff. And so, I'm sure that was not something that resonated positively with any of the jury members.
You need to stop there and we're going to flesh this out. They got into evidence Facebook messages that you had with either public posts or messages. It's not going to make much of a difference.
Yeah, messages.
They got messages in as evidence without excluding that on hearsay basis, whereas the message with which you posted the video to Facebook was not allowed on the basis of hearsay.
Yeah, because there's an exception to the hearsay rule for messages that are by the opposite
Yes.
party that are adverse to them. So basically,
Adverse.
this is one of the reasons why, you know, all lawyers in America who are, you know, have any shred of decency will tell you don't talk to the police. One of the reasons is because if you talk to the police, that police officer can be called as a witness against you if you made some statement that can be used against you. But you and your defense cannot call that police officer to say something positive you said, because one is an exception to the hearsay rule that the government can use. The other one, there's no exception for the defense to use statements that are beneficial to them.
So I know of that distinction. It's party admissions against the interests of the party. Fine, but it also sounds like this is not even relevant to the case. This is just character, impugning your character through something that's totally unrelated. All right, so you protested at a freaking abortion clinic is strictly irrelevant to your actions and activities the day of. I mean, that's like evidence of character, which is typical. Okay, so they got that in, and you're protesting abortion, which for anyone in DC is going to be a holy sacrilege. How long did the trial go on for before closing arguments?
Yeah, so basically their case was a day. Our counter case was about half a day, a little over. And then by that time they had done their counter rebuttal after our case, and then did the jury instructions. That was basically the end of the third day. So they didn't start deliberating until, you know, the morning of the fourth day on, you know, the next Monday.
Yep. How long did they deliberate for?
About 80 minutes.
80 minutes. 80 minutes, an hour and a half, not even. That's like 4 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So when my kids ask how much time is left, we go by episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So that's 3.5 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They just sit there, let's chill, have a cup of coffee. Guilty on all 4 counts. What does it feel like? I'm not trying to infuse the impending thoughts of doom in you. I presume you have them. They come in.
Oh, it's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Because now it's behind me. Before it was like, you know, looming in front of me. I knew it was going to happen, but it, you know, hadn't happened yet. So now it's behind me. It's like I'm dancing on air.
Well, but you're facing jail time. Like how do you...
Well, I was already expecting that.
You're a religious person in general.
I was certainly raised very religious. Go to church. You know, my dad's a pastor, so.
You have a faith, I guess, that at some point this absolute... I'm calling this an injustice. People can call me biased and whatever you want. You have faith that at some point this wrong will be righted. Are you... I guess...
We'll see. Or the country could collapse. You never know.
I don't know if the rule is that you have to wait for sentencing prior to appealing. I think that might be the case, but I'll defer to those who actually know American criminal law. When is your sentencing scheduled for?
I believe early January.
Are they going to do it on January 6th? Just to
no, I think it's gotcha? January 10th.
Now, this is outrageous. I'm going to see if I've missed any questions. This is absolutely outrageous. You just got convicted. When was it? A few days ago?
Hold on. Yeah, when so on Monday morning. My.
So the trial, I mean, this is like, you got convicted Monday morning. That's when the news broke. The trial was last week. This hasn't made sufficient news. This has not made sufficient news, and this is not generating the outrage it absolutely must generate. You've been paying for your own criminal lawyers throughout all of this?
Yes. Yeah.
Am I allowed asking how much? 5 digits?
Probably over $100,000 when it's all said and done.
How are you affording that?
Well, I started working when I was 10, so I've been saving for a while.
This is this is all it's so it's whether or not it's over, it's damn near $100,000. You paid criminal lawyers. You've been convicted now on 4 counts. Whether or not this goes to appeal afterwards, and I'm not going to ask that discussion. Holy shit! This is crazy. What's your family reacting like? I presume you have a good relationship with your parents and siblings.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of them were probably expecting this verdict as well. You know, some of them are definitely more upset than others. More upset than me, definitely. Yeah, because for me, this was what I came into it expecting. My life philosophy is sort of, if you expect the worst, you'll never be disappointed. So I was expecting the worst, and I'm not disappointed.
I'm sharing your Give Send Go right here, and I'm gonna show it. Just make sure that I'm sharing the proper one. Holy holy shit. Okay, this is your bona fide.
Yeah.
Okay, well we're gonna fix this, and I'm gonna partake in fixing it myself. But there's nothing that can right this wrong. Like, and I said this the other day. Like in Canada, they are now trying some of the truckers, or not the truckers, the people who participated in the trucker convoy. This pastor Artur Pawlowski. Are you familiar with him?
To some extent, I haven't followed the story in
I know
detail, though.
he was jailed for giving a sermon to a group of protesters, which they then said was mischief, and they charged him, arrested him, jailed him again on breaching his bail conditions. Spent 50 some odd days in jail. He just got sentenced the day before yesterday, or maybe yesterday, I forget, to 60 days in jail, which was time served because his time before in remand counts for time and a half or whatever. And I said, like, oh, that's great. In a world of tyranny, justice is merely the cessation of the injustice. You're still going through the injustice. You've been convicted. You're facing jail time. Did your lawyers give you an idea as to reasonably what, like years, months?
I think my lawyers are probably too optimistic. So, yeah, we don't really know what they asked for. They certainly could ask for months, and then we'll make our argument and present what we can, and it's sort of, who knows what the judge will come to.
Has any legacy media? Oh, it's not. I don't know why I'm putting legacy in quotes. Has any mainstream media approached you about your story?
Um, I think there was one Washington Post reporter who was in there for some of the trial. Um, I think she did reach out to my lawyer before publishing their story, but with a case like that, it's they're basically going to publish whatever article they publish, and yeah, if you want, you can get a couple sentences in there. So I think, yeah, we ended up not replying to her before the article was published. I was actually a little surprised that the local mainstream media here in North Carolina, they're sort of basically all the major newspapers in Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, they're all owned by McClatchy, which is the huge corporation that owns all the newspapers in America. But I was surprised that the article they published was actually kind of balanced to have my side of it in there as well.
There is no balance that is not abject outrage. There's no balance to this. This is insane, and the fact that other journalists don't understand it, it's insane. The fact that they brought charges in the first place is outrageous, and a conviction on all 4 counts in front of a jury that would convict a ham sandwich. Okay, so hold on 1 second. I know I had another question that I forgot to ask. You have the GoFundMe set up. You're waiting sentencing. It's in January. Why is it in January? What month are we in? Why does it wait? Why are they waiting so long for sentencing?
I don't know. I mean, that might have just been the next availability that the judge had. Those in sort of the period he was looking at.
And so, for everybody knows, it's the jury that convicts. The judge issues the sentence. This is the same Judge Kelly who I'm sure you're going to go do a deep dive on now, or maybe you won't.
I'm aware of some of the controversial rulings he's made.
I don't know what more questions I can possibly have here. I'm going to go to locals and just see if I didn't miss any questions. Everyone in locals, and Rumble, I'm looking at the chat. Get some questions in that I see if I had one more question. Okay. This is absolutely outrageous. You look like I don't know. It's nice to be optimistic and hope for the worst so you're never disappointed. This is crazy. What's your next step? What are you doing now in the interim?
Pretty much the same thing I was doing before, which is just focusing on covering more local stories. I also released a documentary recently, basically sort of laying out the series of events from sort of the perimeter breach at the beginning when the rioting happened, covering the series of events, with the police retreating, the flashbangs, them pushing the sky off, leading up to the breach of the Senate wing door, which was sort of the first breach of the actual Capitol building. Just sort of put that story together, because there's elements that had been covered disparately, but no one had really sort of put them in a sequence to explain, sort of how this series of events led to, the actual Capitol building itself being breached.
I'm going to save. Do you have 5 more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, everyone on Rumble, I'm going to save my question. I remember what it was now. It's not a private question. We'll save the answer. No, I'm going to save the question. Come on over to Rumble. We're going to have a bit of the after party. But we'll get some questions from the locals community because I know they're going to have a few for you. Come to locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com for a few exclusive questions and Q&A. I'm just going to read the chat in Rumble to make sure. Why not a change of venue? Did your lawyers ask for a change of venue? I mean, I know the answer is they're not going to give you one, but did they ask for one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we even pursued, doing that sort of research and making that motion, just because none of the other cases were successful.
Irish Marine says, "God bless you, Stephen." There's no question. I mean, they're even if there's justice at the end of the day, this is wild, and people don't understand it, and they need to pay attention to it. And real fake news media, the legacy media, has to pay attention to this. And I'll scream as loud as I can. Okay, we're going to end it on Rumble. Come on over to locals. I'm going to ask you my question there, and then we'll take some questions from our locals exclusive. Thank you in advance for everybody who's watching now, but to be continued. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Stephen, now we're exclusive to locals. This is all going to be public afterwards, so don't. We're not private now.
Yeah.
I asked you this on Twitter, and I'm not sure. Maybe you looked into it or double checked, or maybe you want to look into it. Did the January 6th committee call you as a witness? Did you offer to testify to the January 6th committee?
I would certainly have been willing to testify for the January 6th committee, but all they did was subpoena my bank records, try to subpoena a phone number that was associated with one of my bank records, get me debanked from Truist, presumably because, they had been subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, and never asked me to testify. I'm not aware of them using any of my video.
Hold on. People are saying, did I say GoFundMe? Well, I obviously meant the Give, Send, Go because that's what it's called. So if I said GoFundMe, it's only because of trauma. So they tried to fuck with you. So I will not swear. I'm sorry. I should not do it. They tried to screw with you and the January 6th committee and continue to ruin your life. Never called you as a witness. Are you aware of whether or not any of your footage made it into any formal proceedings, any January 6th montages? Did they use your footage for anything?
I don't believe the January 6th committee used it for anything. I believe this was used in at least one indictment against one of the violent rioters. I haven't reviewed all the charging documents, so it's possible they used it in more. I was on a witness list for one of the Oath Keeper trials by the defense. They ended up not calling me, but I was called. I don't know if you remember this, but there was representative in Alaska who was a member of the Oath Keepers, and there was a civil trial where some activist was trying to sue under Alaskan law that, this Oath Keeper who was not, charged for January 6th, but they're trying to sue to get him, removed as a legislator, barred from running. So I did testify in that trial regards to what I had seen of the Oath Keepers of the Capitol. But my footage was used in an Epic Times documentary, one of theirs on January 6th. I'm not aware of it being used by the January 6th committee in any way.
And I guess, it might be a stupid question in a sense, because they'll say, sure, we used it, but not because of its journalistic quality, just because it was evidence. And so therefore he's still not a journalist and we're justified. And I'm flabbergasted. First of all, I'm a little irritated. I said GoFundMe instead of Give, Send, Go, but I'll have to get over that one. Katie would like to know more about your faith. I mean, faith has got to be something to help you get through this. But question like about your faith, the degree to which do you pray regularly, and how are you coping with this on a day to day? You just pushed it to the back of your mind.
Yeah, So I was raised in a Christian household. I believe in God, but I am not a Christian myself. I do pray, sort of on a day-to-day level. I don't necessarily think about it that much. Um, yeah, because it's not a big part of my life. Just this conviction over my head. It is what it is, and when that comes time for me to be sentenced, then I'll probably think about it more.
The Astral Doge Play says his testimony for January 6th would have ruined the Hollywood production. Do you think the U.S. Republic has fallen? This is from Auntly.
Um, a republic literally means a public thing. That's what separates a republic from any other form of government. Is not necessarily the representation or whatnot. It's really that the purpose of the government is to, be for the people instead of, being for the monarch, for the dictator or whatnot. In terms of whether it's fallen, I don't know. There's certainly a lot of self-centered and self-motivated people running the government. I'm not sure how many of our politicians really have the public interest at heart anymore.
Did they force you to take down your footage from the internet? Or was it taken down on
No,
on
but
various
they did get
platforms?
my Facebook account deleted. So I'm not sure if it's because they subpoenaed it or because, my Facebook account was referenced and the reporting on me. There's law and crime. Their article referenced that I had posted it to Facebook, and I think Facebook, sort of scours the internet for any negative mentions and stories and then deletes the accounts. So, I wasn't really someone who posted controversial stuff, so I had never had any warnings or anything on my Facebook account. Just one day, couldn't log in anymore. The account was completely deleted. Really, no appeal or anything.
The footage is still on Rumble?
Yeah, though unfortunately, what I lost in the Facebook account is all of the footage and posts I had covering the demonstrations and riots in 2020. I had solely posted that to a Facebook page I had created exclusively for that purpose. And so when my Facebook account was deleted, I hadn't thought to have backed any of that up. So unfortunately, I couldn't really show anyone any of the videos that I had been capturing in 2020 because now that was gone.
Wow. Okay, so that's what account is it under on Rumble for those who want to see it?
Stephen, you can look up Stephen Horn. I think the username is Stephen E. Horn, like it is on Twitter. Yeah, if you look up my Twitter account, you can. I think I've linked to it several times.
Okay.
I'll probably post another link to it when I get off this, just for anyone who's interested.
Dude, well, first of all, I'm gonna be blasting this around as loudly as possible. Robert and I are going to talk about this Sunday night because I've got my questions, which not I don't think they can be answered. But we're definitely going to put this on blast of the highest order because it's an absolute. What's happening to the January 6ers in general is an injustice of the highest order. This is just it's farcical. It's absolutely farcical. You're dealing with it well. Now, hold on, Stephen. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you or that you want to say that you will say, Viva, why didn't you ask me that? Or kick yourself after this is over?
I don't believe so. I guess if people want to watch the documentary, they can go to j6documentary.com. I posted it there free for anyone who wants to watch that.
Perfect. I'm looking here. I think I put all of your Twitter links in the description. So at J6documentary, this week in the Triangle, and Stephen Barron at Proton Mail, and Stephen E. Horn for your Proton Mail, and stephenhorn.locals.com. What do you have on your locals? So what content are you putting on your locals page?
Just journalism reporting I was doing. I actually used to be a supporter on y'all's locals. I think I'm not anymore after my debit card changed or something. But yeah, I used to watch your show a lot. And 2020, probably early 2021, before I started producing more of my own content, I had a lot more time to watch other people's.
Well, I think there's a way that we can gift an account. I'm gonna speak with our account manager at Locals. All right, man, Stephen. I'm a stubborn, loud, obsessive individual, and now I am on this like what I don't know, like flies on poop. I'm on this, and I'm going to be making as much noise as I know how, because this is crazy. It's crazy, and it's especially crazy that I didn't hear about it until the conviction. And it's sort of like that the story of the guy from oh geez, Colt. Well, and I think it's a New Mexico individual, elected municipal council or whatever, removed from office for insurrection. I forget what his name was. Colt?
Was it a Colt McAbee?
It had a coup for a Kof in it.
Colt.
Anyways, I'll get it after. But
I think I know who you're talking about. But.
Well, this story is now officially on blast, and I'm gonna make sure everyone in our broader community knows to tweet it out at everybody.
If there's anyone else who wants to interview me, I'm free to share the facts with anyone who wants to know about it.
I will be sending you in whoever I have direct contact with. I'm sending the info and your contact info over to. I won't say who I have direct contact with, because it would also let everyone know who I don't. I do not have a direct line to Joe Rogan yet. Stephen, thank you very much. We're going to keep in touch, and I'm going to do everything that I can in my capacity to support you and help you, at least in every way. So you have my number, you have my info. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
It's crazy. All right, go and I guess enjoy the evening and keep on keeping on. Everyone knows where to find you, and we'll keep in touch, man. Have a good one.
Yep.
All right.
Show.
Night. Holy crap! Can I swear now? I really feel like I want to swear. Okay, locals. That's nuts. What's the guy's name? The New Mexico guy. I know it has like a C, an O, and a U, and it's pronounced in a way that's not the way you would typically pronounce a name. Oh, did this guy get on the Capitol? Did this guy get on with the Capitol Police guy at the same time somewhere? Midwinter Days or Michigan Winter Days. He actually captured Tarek Johnson on video at one point in time, but I don't think they had any direct interactions. Swear now, this is fucking un-American, says Uppity Livestock. Well, I don't know if Evan Miller, by the way, who is the majestic top hat, the locals man, or this time around, who I don't want to say the winner. It's Sam. So it's the locals chat this week. Evan Miller is in the backdrop, and the timing worked out well because we actually had a surprise interview because Steven said, "Yep, I'm doing this," and then it all worked perfectly. So we got Evan Miller, who is majestic top hat, who was last week or the week before selected individual for the chat. Evan, are you ready? I'm going to bring you in now. Thumbs up. There we go. Look. All right. We got another member of the community. Evan, sir, can I swear with you?
Yeah. I think my virgin ears can take it.
Can you believe that load of horse shit it's judicial horse shit. I can't, it's more outrageous than I thought it was going to be when I heard the details. Oh my goodness.
The entire January 6th saga has been absolutely outrageous. It actually spurred an interest in law for me.
We're going to get into this. Were you blackpilled before, I don't know, 2020?
Honestly, I was pretty ignorant politically before 2020. Around 2019, 2020 is where I really began listening to you guys and following you. I picked up a long distance courier job during that time. My own brain to keep me company in the car. So a friend recommended me to you guys, and it's been a great decision.
Okay, now you just froze there for 1 second. I don't know if it was me or everybody, but just in case it was for everybody. Long distance courier driving.
Yeah, that was just a once a month thing.
Okay.
It was just an odd job to help make some ends meet.
Now, for those who are watching now, and Evan, are you going to be okay with if I publish this entire video to YouTube and Rumble afterwards?
Sure, go right ahead. Worst case scenario, I embarrass myself in front of thousands of people.
Oh well, don't worry about that. You have a generic enough name. Evan Miller is a member of our locals community, and what we do on the locals community is supporters, people who are like say supporter members of the community who want to. So I put up a post, everyone replies, and then I randomly pick a number and select a person. We have a discussion. That's what this is right now. So, dude, where are you from? If you don't mind, well, you'll tell me what you don't want to answer. But where are you from? How old are you? And how did you discover the channel?
Let's see. I'm from Bakersfield, California. I've been lived here basically my entire life. And I discovered the channel. I was actually introduced to you guys by my friend Chris. I said I was interested in hearing more about politics, staying up to date on some news, and needed some stuff to listen to. He recommended me to you guys. I think my first podcast with you guys, I was driving back from Ontario, California, back to Bakersfield through the grapevine. It was you and Barnes on, and listening to you guys, I was just like, okay, these sound like two people who really know what they're talking about. I love Barnes' technical breakdown of legal matters, and listening to you two is what really started. It's what spurred my interest in law. I'm not sure what is going to happen with that or where it's possible to go with that at all, but
How you also look quite young. Are you 28?
no. I definitely have a huggable face. That I've been told. I am 33.
Okay,
I
not so far off.
Yeah. But yeah, just a couple of years ago, I got invited to my church's youth group, which was kind of an awkward experience. So I get it a lot.
Well, and we say I think there's an English expression, but in French we say l'âge de Jésus. The age of Jesus is 33, right?
I don't. I am not familiar with where that's actually come from.
Okay. That is. I'm not going crazy. That is an actual expression. Hold on. I'm going to Google this. Âge de Jésus. Because I remember when I turned 33. Where was I? L'âge de Jésus. It's a French expression. 30. Okay, so I think it's derived from he was 33. So you're 33 years old. Bakersfield, California, which from what I've understood now from Barnes, Bakersfield is sort of tends to be more conservative than, say, LA.
Honestly, contrary to what a lot of people think, most of California outside of the main urban hubs is conservative. We were actually Republican led for most of our history throughout like 1986, I think.
I'm looking at Bakersfield on a map. I don't think I actually fully appreciated where it was.
It's about an hour and a half north of LA.
Okay, and it's what it's a big town. I mean, it's got to be pretty big anyhow, even if it's small by comparison to LA.
Yeah, it's bigger than it was growing up for sure. Most of the area just to the south of my house used to be farmland. Now you can drive 5-8 miles before you actually start reaching agricultural areas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're like the 13th biggest city in California right now. Yeah, we're roughly, I think the population is between 400,000 and 500,000. That's wrong on that one.
Big enough. And you were born and raised there. How has it changed in your young life of 33 years? Has it changed radically from your own experience?
Oh, geez. So I actually wasn't born here, but my youngest memories are all here. I supposedly was born in Fountain Valley. As for how it's changed, yeah, the town's gotten bigger, traffic's gotten worse, and the roads have stayed the same. So
so look at this. Since 1990, I haven't brought this up, but the population was just under 200,000 in 1990, and now the population is over 400,000 in 2020. So double over 30 years. That's. Have I ever been to Bakersfield? I've driven to Vegas.
You would probably remember it if you were ever driving between LA and Fresno and spontaneously combusted.
No, so you know what? I've done the drive from LA to Vegas, from LA to where else? I got family that live in the Woodland Hills area. That name I remember. What do you do? May I ask what you do for a living now?
I try to cobble together something resembling an income. I used to be a paramedic before I injured my back. I had, I'd worked in emergency services for about 6 years between being an EMT and a paramedic. Injured my back about the same month I proposed because I have the best timing at literally everything, apparently. Since then, I've been trying to put together something where I can use with what skills that I have that don't involve some form of physical labor. And yeah, I opened a writing business, freelance writing business. And then, AI became a big thing. So, like I said, best timing. So let's see, I do a freelance writing business. I work as a behavior interventionist working with autistic children. I run a gaming YouTube channel with my family.
Hold
Um,
on. Well, you obviously do. I was gonna pick up on that one in particular.
I had a feeling.
What's the what type of games?
So honestly, man, just about everything, but everything displayed on the channel is multiplayer family fun stuff.
What's the channel name? I'm going right now. I got to see this.
So the channel is called Checkpoint Studios.
Checkpoint Studio.
You'll know its logo should be a big rubber duck.
Yeah, right here. Oh, dude. Well, okay. You'll have. I think you'll have slightly more subscribers in a short while. Let me bring this up.
We're hoping for it.
Now let me see this here. This is it. People are gonna poop on you for using YouTube, but that is where the playground is. Although there's a lot of gaming stuff on Rumble now as well, and I suspect it might. Do you have a Rumble channel yet?
I understand that it's in the works. We don't have one yet.
Good. Well, you'll get there. You'll get there. You have to do it there. Okay. I'm looking here. What happened with Dragons Overwatch that was different than the other ones?
Oh, so that was a different. So most of our videos up right now are just group gameplay videos where it's just various family members all playing games and our commentary.
What would happen if we took?
I'm gonna turn the volume down. Sorry.
This one we took basically the dragon cinematic from Overwatch, ran it through 4 different languages in Google Translate, and then translated it back to English, and then voiced it over.
So hold on, then we might want to hear the audio. Hold on, that's like what they did with Frozen when I think they translated the song like multiple times back.
Yes, Melinda Kathleen Reese.
He summoned tigers, but when he passed, he realized he was alone. Victory was always delicious.
Sounds pretty good.
That is my younger brother. His duck persona on that channel is Shadow Duck, and he's honestly amazing when it comes to editing, voice coaching. I voiced one of the characters in that video, and I do not have a radio voice at all. So he's amazing at what he does.
That's very cool. And first of all, and how many? May I ask how many kids you have, or we don't even know age, but you have many more than one?
Hold on, are you talking kids or siblings?
Kids.
I do this channel mostly with my siblings.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I have 3 kids and a little boy on the way.
Touch wood, Pupukadena Hora. Good, congratulations. That's magnificent.
Thank you.
I wanted a 4th, but dude, you have to do them quickly before you realize how they get increasingly not annoying, but I'd say more difficult with each child. First is always everything's new. Second is nothing's old yet. Third, getting there. Now, 4th is going to be, that's amazing.
I was honestly hoping like, okay, well, let's hold off until we're a little bit more financially secure. And as I've been following the news, I'm like, well, that's never going to happen. So
it is. It's crazy. Does your wife work as well?
My wife, yes, my wife is a goddamn hero, honestly. She works at O'Reilly's Auto Parts as a merchandiser. It's kind of a long story involved in how we met and how we got together, but she is just an amazing woman. Like, I do not deserve her.
First of all, I know the chat will be saying, don't say such things, Evan. This is like when I call myself an idiot. Although I sometimes genuinely feel it. Not sometimes, a lot of times. But you're a 2 working family with 3 kids, 1 on the way. And I mean, is California worse than elsewhere? I mean, you might not have the basis of comparison, but what in the cost of life has increased that you can remark offhand? I mean, it's everything, but in particular.
So let's see. To sum up what I can with my experience, I'm basically working 3 jobs right now between my writing, not even counting the channel, with my writing business, working as a behavioral interventionist, and I do DoorDash literally every night. We're barely making ends meet. The price of gas here shot up like 80 cents in the last 2 months.
What is it? What is it a gallon now? It's over $5.
Cheapest I've got, $5.19 down the street.
$5.19 a gallon. In a gallon, there's 4 liters, give or take. Correct?
I don't know. We're American over here.
Trying to think of how much it is, how much that would be Canadian, because like we take for it's. I think it's about the same in Canada, in general. I'll look up in a second. $5.20 a gallon. Florida is 4 and change, and I think you can find places that are just under $4. Okay, that's outrageous. And you have to have 2 cars as a family of 2 adults and 3 kids?
Yeah, and I got my car back when I was still a paramedic with a good career and thought I wouldn't have trouble. And, we're still making payments on that one. Fortunately, my wife owns her car outright. Um, Groceries are an absolute nightmare. An average, I cannot make a small run to the store for under $80. I just went to the store last night. I basically got sandwiches, hot dog stuff, some like basics. $85.
It's unbelievable. It's unreal. And first of all, the so you have one car that you're still paying for. That's not under a lease, but what is it called? Financing.
Yeah.
I said in one way we were sort of like fortunate that we had no credit when we came down to the States, so we couldn't even finance a car. But they just bend you over and violate your economic. They violate you economically. And then,
Well, and I mean, had the whole situation been different, like we'd been more afloat, but we had a long, drawn out battle with my wife's ex. That cost like $30,000. I guess I should clarify. 3 of my children are technically stepchildren.
yeah, okay.
They call me dad. I call them kids. I don't really care. But we had a long, drawn out battle with my wife's ex. Heavily abusive. Kid came home with bruises. So, we had to hire a lawyer. That was $30,000. I literally had to strike an arrangement to start writing legal articles for the guy to put on his blog to pay off our debt. We maxed out our credit cards multiple times. I used to have a credit score of about 785, and now it's in the gutter. Our credit cards are maxed out. The whole thing's been financially very, very difficult, and the economic circumstances in California have not made anything any better. We want to get out, but we're not even sure that's a possibility.
I mean that's and if you were to get out, would you think of going to Texas, or would you think of going, like, I don't know, more inland? Tennessee, I guess, is further in. Like, where would you even go?
My wife's freezes, so she says we're not allowed to live within 2 states of the Canadian border. There's a few ideas that we're looking at: Reno, Nevada, Utah, possibly Kentucky. With her brother. We're mostly looking for places where we have support groups already established. So I think, it was Utah, Reno, Nevada, Kentucky. There's a few other places we were looking at. South Dakota might be a possibility, but I'll have to rearrange the map without my wife knowing. I'll convince her of that.
Utah, I've only been there once, and we spent a couple of days. It's like, it looks geographically, it's heaven on earth. I don't know, like, all other things considered, my number one concern in life is looking up crime of the cities and then moving accordingly. Is Bakersfield, has it gotten bad and grimy over the years, or is it pretty safe in terms of crime?
We have quite a bit of crime, major gang problem down here. There's all sorts of different gangs around the city. I actually sat on a criminal gang trial, and they pulled up the map, and it looked like a Picasso painting with all the different territories labeled all over each other. It's just like, we know there's certain areas of town not to go to. We live in a pretty good area of town, and my car window just got smashed last Saturday, and they ripped open the steering column and tried to steal my car. So
back in Canada, I mean, I would leave my car unlocked. It was easier than they didn't. It's funny. I don't know if they would smash windows, but I just know that whenever I left the car unlocked, someone would rummage through it, and it was just easier to leave it unlocked than risk the car. Just leave nothing in the car. I mean, it doesn't seem like they were. I don't even know what they were looking for, because I would oftentimes have change in the center, and the change would be there, like not like maybe $10 or $12. I don't know what the hell they were looking for. It's not like people carry guns in their car in Montreal.
Well, in my case, my car was a Hyundai, so they were trying to steal it. You and Barnes covered that whole issue a while ago. But yeah, no, normally you never had broken windows until a little bit ago. We don't have the same problem like San Diego or San Francisco has. But
when was the last time? Have you been to San Diego? No, not San Diego. San Francisco recently?
Recently, no.
Okay.
I went when I was a teenager once, a long time ago.
But it's like, it's the known thing in California. Like, you don't go there unless you have to. It's not it's nobody goes there touristically to see how beautiful the city is, or are there still areas that are decent?
I have absolutely no idea, honestly. Like, touring and sightseeing has not been in the budget for a couple of years, I'm afraid.
Man, oh man. Yes, in the chat, hold on. It says, Love in Two Lime says, your plight makes the Biden admin smile. That's the question I have. It's like, you're not alone. And I don't know how anybody can't observe it. The only sense it makes is that there's some people who think that this suffering is somehow like holy suffering. And so it's what we have to do for the greater good. Or others say, well, I'm suffering, but I'm sure it would have been worse under the guy that I hate. Therefore, I have to continue supporting the guy who's the source of my suffering now. Is it? I mean, it might be a loaded question because, ideologically, you might already have an answer. But it is, or is it remarkably different than what year are we in? Under Trump. I mean, it's night and day comparison.
Yes, I mentioned that I did DoorDash. I'm still trying to get my writing business off the ground. So right now, DoorDash makes up the bulk of my income. Back then, I could fill my tank up for $30. I averaged $150 a night, and I only worked 3 or 4 hours. It was good back then. Now, if I make $90 to $100, it's a good night. My gas tank takes $60 on average to fill up. It's just like I work 2 days in a row and then have to fill up the gas tank, and it's like, oh, there go like a third of my earnings just right into my car.
Well, why don't you just go out and like Kamala Harris is get one of them electric cars? Bada bing, bada boom. It's.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't know if you've seen the new Samson rap song, or it was 2 songs ago. But he makes the joke, I can't afford a $50,000 electric car. And even if I could, I'd go out and buy a gas one because I don't trust anything you guys have to say.
It's like listening to those people who are like, oh, let them riot. Insurance will cover the property damage. It's like, no, it doesn't even come close.
Well, that's if it even covers. I mean, most places don't cover riot or insurrection as, oh my goodness. Well, okay, look, we'll move off the unhappy realities of the world and get back to other ones. Can you believe that guy's? Can you believe that guy's story? And have you been following the news? Are you on Twitter?
I'm not on Twitter. Most of the news I've been following have been through you, Tim Cast, or Matt Christensen.
Okay, well, the guy's name was Couy Griffin. Couy, Couy. I've never seen that name before.
If it makes you feel any better, I could not have a single teacher in grade school spell my name correctly. I don't know why it's 4 letters, but no one could get it.
Nobody could get Evan?
No one could get Evan. And the other problem I'd have is people would spell my name right and pronounce it wrong. I just got called Yvonne over the phone not that long ago.
Well, you never know these days. It's the creative pronoun. Have you seen the Peel? What is this guy name? It's Keys and Peel, or Peel and Keys, where he does the improper pronunciation of names.
No.
Hold on. I think it's called Key and Peel improper pronunciation. Am I going to be able to get it? It's hilarious. Substitute teacher. I'll send you the link because it's 3 minutes. It will have you laughing hilariously. And there was a guy who did this video called "Water Is Not Wet," who had a very funny mispronunciation. He would just mispronounce words all the time. It was quite good. Evan, though, geez, Louise, maybe it's because of my milieu. I knew a number of Evans growing up. So the news of the day now, and Rumble has just put out a statement. Geez, Louise, the British government sent a letter to TikTok, social media companies, including Rumble, asking if they plan on allowing Russell Brand to remain monetized on their platforms. It's a freaking war out there, Evan. It's only getting worse by the day.
I every single time I hear someone say other countries have freedom of speech, I'm just gonna clip this part and send.
Oh no, people criticize Canada for not having freedom of speech, which now I realize they don't. But they look at this here. I'll bring this up. Let me just make sure I'm not gonna so neurotic about accidentally showing a DM that has someone's cell number in it. This is the letter. Are we seeing the same thing right now? No, we're not, because I haven't shared it. This is the letter the British government. They have a committee. They have their tribunals, Culture, Media, and Sports Committee, sent a letter to the BBC saying, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow in detail. We're concerned about the environment, of the work environment, yada, yada. Oh, but also, could you please assure us, while respecting the potential police investigations, all information that can be disclosed publicly will be. Finally, we would urge you to encourage people to report incidents to the police. This is the government asking the BBC, which is government funded from what I understand. Oh yeah, by the way, if there's any more Russell Brand accusers out there, make sure they go talk to the police. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Get people to fabricate stuff, and then they sent a letter to TikTok saying, is he still monetized? We don't want him making money off of his video where he responded to the allegations. It's oh man, are you doom pilled, or do you still have optimism for the future?
I mean, I have 3 kids with a 4th on the way. I have to have some sort of optimism for the future. That's just the only option that you can have. You can't raise kids and tell them all is lost and enjoy life. So,
the writing business. What's is it not? So it's what is it like? Describe it, because I'm picturing. I always think of translation, but it's not translation.
So when I injured my back, I had to find some sort of skill that I had that I could market, and the only option I had was that I've been writing stories since I was 11 years old. It was always a hobby. I never intended to make a career out of it. And so I thought, well, I can translate that into a business. And I started doing things, content writing, like blogs, articles, newsletters, and so on. I couldn't really get that as off the ground as I was hoping to, especially not once AI became a thing and people parading around with horribly written articles saying, oh, yeah, I got AI to do this. And me looking at them and going, that's not well written at all, but it could very easily get there. So I started pivoting my business more towards creative writing, book and story writing, because I mean, if you're looking to make money selling books, yeah, you might maybe try to have AI write a book, but most authors are creative people and they want to tell a story. And I've got 20 years of practicing storytelling. So I, thought I could help guide people through this process. I've already got a couple of clients, and it's been some of the most fun work that I've been just coaching and helping people. I offer editing services for books as well, but a lot of what I do is just helping people learn how to tell a story in a way that they can edit on their own. The independent author community does not have a lot of money.
Well, I also, I know people talk about the limitless capacity of AI, but they won't be able to do things that require. I don't think it will be able to do things that require creativity as well as humans. Even the crap that it does pull up in terms of generic summaries, other than the problem being they're factually incorrect sometimes, I don't think it can ever replicate the skillful art of a human. But maybe I'm just being naive or optimistic.
I think the same way, although I've already watched it come leaps and bounds from what it used to be, enough that I was like, I don't think this content thing's going to last very long. I could be wrong on that. I'm still pretty new to the whole like writing copy and things like that. But for an author, writing a book is a passion project. Having a robot do it for you kills the point. So that's no robot's going to be able to supplant the passion, sense of achievement that a writer's going to have in creating their own story.
Evan, I want to ask you a question because it's a concern of mine. Does watching the channel and the information that we provide, does it make you more optimistic, more pessimistic, happier, sadder? How would you qualify it? Because the underlying reason why I would still like an honest answer. The underlying reason is if understanding reality necessarily makes us more cynical, more jaded, and more unhappy, are we better off living a life of ignorance? But how has it improved your psychological quality of life since having joined the channel, or has it made you darker and more cynical?
I mean, I understand the ignorance is bliss sort of idea, but and maybe that's true. Maybe I would be happier for a time until I'm let off a cliff or I can't find a way out of a situation for my family. There are some days where I can't bring myself to turn it on and listen. I won't lie. Like, things are dark right now. But I cannot believe that living a lie is going to improve anything else. Almost all of the problems that we faced involve people unable to face unpleasant realities. The rise of transgenderism, unable to face the unpleasant reality that your feelings might not be in line with biological reality. That's a really hard and terrible thing to have to go through. But instead of facing that, we've stuck our head in the sand. I look at that and I look at the way that people turn out. I'm like, it doesn't turn out any better. So yeah, it sucks sometimes. It sucks a lot sometimes. but I'm not going to let my family get let off a cliff.
We're not going to, that is optimistic, but we are going to end with a laugh because in the community, hold on, not that, that's Mr. Garvey. Here we go. We won't play the whole thing. If you haven't, it's 6 minutes? Hold on. We'll play a few seconds here.
Listen up, y'all.
It's hilarious.
I'm y'all substitute teacher, Mr. Garvey. I taught school for 20 years in the inner city, so don't even think about messing with me. Y'all feel me?
Is this?
Okay.
Is this?
Take roll here.
Here we go.
Jay Quellen. Where's Jay Quellen at? No Jay Quellen here? Yeah.
Do you mean Jacqueline?
Okay. So that's how it's going.
Okay, then it goes on. Okay, so it goes on, and it gets funnier and funnier, and he gets angrier and angrier. Evan, do you have any dogs?
No pets. My wife and daughter are both allergic to basically anything with fur on it. So,
well then, how's it?
my mom has 7 cats though, and I periodically get to go over there and pet them. So
7 cats. There's jokes in there, Evan. I'm not going to make them. You could get like a
7 cats. I have 7 siblings. My mom doesn't do anything in small numbers.
Well, I would say, you get a West Highland Terrier and then shave him bald like the groomer did, and that should be what do they call them? Hypoallergenic. But yeah, that's
free winter clothing. Yeah.
Evan, stick around. We're going to end this here, and we'll talk for a bit off air. But Evan, thank you very much. You did not do badly. You actually did very well.
I appreciate that. If you don't, do you mind if I plug my business real quick?
Plug everything. Yeah, please.
Well, you've already introduced the channel, but anyone who has any friends or interested in learning how to write, tell a better story, get your story sharpened. I've been doing that sort of thing for 20 years. I'm working on books. I run a company called Penmaster Productions. You can find me at penmasterproductions.com. It's also on Facebook. It's Penmaster Productions. So yeah. And
hold on. I'm going to bring it up. Okay, I'm just making sure I typed it properly. Penmaster Productions. Stop screen. We're going to show this. Share screen. Penmasterproductions.com. This is it?
Yes. Oh my God, I forgot. I need to. That website is going to have some changes coming to it for sure.
First of all, I was going to say it looks good. This is. I mean, I know how the websites work. This is like, what's the template website? But this is fine. Just so long as it's not Ipsilon, you're already ahead of the game. All right, good. That's it. There you go. Boom shakalaka. Penmasterproductions.com. And the channel. What was the channel called again? I erased that window, but.
It's Checkpoint Studios.
Checkpoint Studios. All right. Evan, we keep saying it on the channel. It's always darkest before the storm, and we have not yet gotten as dark as it's going to get because I said it. I'm going to look smart for having said it. The war on Russell Brand is a war on all of us. It's the same thing. They pick the targets are just ancillary to the underlying target, and the underlying target is full control over thought, speech, internet, communication, and the dissemination of information. And they just have to use their big targets as the way to get there. But in the meantime, we all have to live our lives and try to live them with passion, with purpose, and with sanity. So, Evan, thank you for doing this. It was great. Now, you stay there. I'm going to end the stream officially. Make sure that I do. And we'll talk for a few minutes, and then I'm going to get ready for 7 o'clock with Owen Schroyer talking about the other injustice of the week. Evan, thank you very much.
Hey, have a good one.
Night, everybody.